Story 1: The Harvard Wormhole Experiment. They gave me $1,000,000 to keep my trap shut, and I did for 15 years. But last night I was making the rounds, and I saw the professor again. I had a heart attack 3 years back, and I tell you, when I saw him standing there in front of room 204, I felt another one coming on. He turned and smiled, and it was like he hadn't aged a day in 15 years. "Hey there, Chief," he said, and that was it. I dropped my clipboard on the ground and hightailed it out of there, never looking back. What I'm about to tell you is liable to make me sound crazier than a 3-horn goat, but I promise you, there's crazier things out there. The cops don't believe me. The official story is that the professor and those students died 15 years ago. Room 200 for just up and exploded, they said. Damnedest thing, and there's some truth there. That room did explode, but it wasn't an accident. We knew exactly what we were doing, or we thought we did. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. They call me an assistant supervisor of maintenance, but really I'm a janitor and always have been. You might wonder why I'm still at it after getting that $1,000,000. That dough is for Junior, so he doesn't have to go through the same shit that I did. The night this happened, I was assigned to the Astrophysics Center a bit northwest of the main Harvard campus. Until that night, this was always my favorite beat. I mean, God help you if you wound up at one of the biology labs. Those goddamn dead, cut open animals all over the place used to give me nightmares. And really, thinking back, I'd take those nightmares of mutilated and scattered organs any night over the stuff that has haunted me ever since. Anyway, I was there mopping the hallway on the second floor of the lab building when the door to room 104 opened up, and this guy popped his head out. "Hey, you," I looked around to make sure he was talking to me. "Yes. Can I help you, sir?" I thought he was going to bitch about the room being a mess or something. "How'd you like to make $1,000, Chief, an hour's work at most? Easy money. Does that sound good to you?" It sure did. Things were tight at home, as they always were. 1,000 would knock off some of those long overdue bills. But I was also on a tight schedule. They didn't give you much breathing room. Don't want you standing around thinking about it all, I guess. "That sounds great, sir," I said, but I got to stick to my beat. The man laughed. "We're about to make history, Chief," he said, "and you're worried about emptying the bathroom trash. Come on, don't sweat it, you won't get in trouble. I promise I'm a professor here. I'll vouch for you." The guy did look like a professor, with carefully combed gray hair and big old glasses on his face. I shrugged, leaned my mop against the wall, and said, "Sure, what do I have to do?" "That's fantastic. Come on in, Chief. Come on in." I followed him into the room. One look, and I should have just turned around then and there and told him to keep his damn money. But I didn't. As soon as I stepped in, I felt the little hairs all over my body stand up. I don't mean I was scared. I mean like there was an electrical charge in that room, and I had a guess about where it was coming from. There in the center of the room, on a round table, was a large glass globe crackling with electricity, like what you see if you go into a kid's science museum. Like they somehow created a lightning storm in a glass ball. This one was sort of vibrating around on its stand and buzzing, and the lightning inside was black. I could feel the electricity coming from it, from across the room. There were for kids there. Students, I guessed. sitting in a row of chairs along one wall. More than sitting, they were strapped into those chairs with metal things over their heads like those big bowl things you see at a hair salon. They all had their eyes closed. I said, "What's going on here? Those kids okay?" "They're quite fine," said the professor. "As to what is going on, as I said, we are about to make history. We are going to open the first wormhole." "Wormhole," I said. "Like in the movies?" The professor laughed. "I suppose so, Chief," he said. "Now listen, we had a last-minute cancellation, but that's okay because it's an easy job. We're going to be kicking things off here shortly, and once they are properly kicked off, the wormhole will open. I will enter. If I am not back in 30 minutes, you are to pull that lever there, and this will close the wormhole." I looked to where he was pointing, at a big red lever attached to a giant whirring machine that was hooked up to the metal bowls over the students' heads. "But, won't you be trapped on the other side of the wormhole?" I asked. Not that I had the slightest idea about what the hell was going on. "Just so, Chief," said the professor. "We've got this down to two possibilities. 1. The wormhole opens up to what we're calling the second universe. The best way that I can explain this possibility is that there is a different reality that exists on the other side of this one. The other side of an invisible wall. The wormhole will provide a door in that wall. And the other possibility, that the wormhole will open to a place that man was not meant to go. 30 minutes will give me enough time to get in and out, if the first possibility is true. And if it's the second, then you'll close the hole with that lever, and my students will destroy my work." This was all way above my pay grade, and my head was spinning. Why only two possibilities? How the hell did they come up with those two? And if this real, why the hell would the professor take a coin-toss chance of getting stuck in the place that man was not meant to go? I mean, those were just starter questions among the swarm that was buzzing around my head. "I see that you have some reservations," said the professor. "I assure you that your only job is to pull that lever after 30 minutes. That's it, Chief. We'll take care of the rest. And anything that happens isn't on you. The documentation is quite in order." He tapped a folder that was sitting on the circular table. "And here, I'll write you a check now, before we proceed." As he wrote out the check, I wondered if it would still be valid if he got swallowed up by the wormhole. I actually had that thought, as crazy as it sounds. It was still all so weird and abstract to me at that point. "Here," he said, handing over the check. "Let's do it, Chief. As soon as I enter that hole, give me exactly 30 minutes on the dot. That's all you have to do." I took the check, mumbled a thanks, and watched as he walked over to the machine. He pulled the lever. There was a loud crackling sound, and I watched in unease as one by one the students' eyes shot open. There were no pupils there, like their eyes were rolled back in their sockets. "Hey now," I said, taking a step towards the machine. "They are quite fine," said the professor, "I assure you." Their jaws started to move like they were grinding their teeth. The professor took a jar of neon blue liquid from a shelf on the wall. He unscrewed the lid and poured the stuff over the electric globe on the round table. The thing started going crazy, and then the globe shattered completely, bits of glass flying through the air as shoots of black lightning zapped out into the room. I ducked down. I had had enough by then and was ready to get the hell out of there. Then it happened. A fucking black hole appeared in the middle of the room, sucking in the bolts of electricity. It grew larger and larger. until it took up half the room. All I could hear was this rushing sound, like the world's largest vacuum cleaner running at full throttle. "Remember, Chief," shouted the professor with a wild look on his face. 30 minutes exactly. Then he stepped into the thing and was gone. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. At first my mind was a mess, staring at that whooshing black hole that seemed hungry to suck everything in. I looked at the kids hooked up to the machine. Their eyes rolled back. White holes, I guess they looked like, their jaws grinding away like crazy. It was too much to make sense of. I looked down at my watch. 15 minutes and 31 seconds had gone by since the professor got swallowed up by the wormhole. My heart was pounding and I kept pacing back and forth, trying to work out what the hell was going on. Then I started to zero in on it. I was getting pranked. Not a prank like we used to do as kids, setting dog shit on somebody's front steps and all that idiocy. I mean a prank like the sophisticated college folk do, where they tell you something's going on but the whole point is to just observe your reaction. A psychological experiment. Probably cameras in here, watching me right now. See what I do. 12 minutes to go. I saw a trickle of blood come down from one of the kids' nose. I leaned down to look at him closely. He was shaking a little bit, all over. If I throw that lever, this will all probably stop. Maybe that was the test. I had to decide between trapping the professor in the black hole and saving the kids hooked up to the machines. None of it was real, of course, but they didn't know that I knew that. But then, screaming in the back of my mind was that voice, what if it is real? 10 minutes to go. The professor had promised me that the kids were all right. Another one started bleeding from the nose. If it wasn't real, it was a hell of a trick. Where did the professor go, if not through that black hole? I thought about touching it, but whenever I got close, I was filled with total terror. It sure seemed real, like it really took you someplace far, far away from here. I walked over to the table and picked up the folder that was there. Just like the professor had said, the first page was instructions to shut down the machine and destroy it if he didn't return within 30 minutes. I flipped that page over, and the next one had a photograph of one of the students. I read what it said. It was a consent form. I, Jackson Stewart, acknowledge the possibility of my imminent death if I participate in this experiment. I am prepared to give my life to science. I flipped that page, and there were 3 more just like it. Now, I'm no lawyer, but there was no way in hell that this experiment was legal, if it was real, even with those consent forms. So it probably wasn't real, and if it was, then the professor lied to me. He had said that the kids were fine. This folder was telling me something else. 2 minutes to go. I took a deep breath and paced the room, watching each second tick by. My mind was telling me that none of it was real, but my gut was screaming in horror. I just looked at my watch. It would be over soon enough, one way or the other. 30 seconds. I walked over to the machine and put my hand on the lever. God damn it. Why is he cutting it so close? I watched the seconds tick by, and I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I could risk trapping the professor wherever the hell he had gone off to. 5 seconds, my hand was shaking. For seconds, sweat was pouring down my face, dripping into my eyes. 3 seconds, one of the students started to moan. The one that I saw was named Jackson in the folder. 2 seconds, oh God, oh God, oh God. 1 second. Jackson started to shake, 0 seconds, shit. I tensed my muscles to pull the lever. One look at Jackson and I knew I had to pull it. He was violently jerking around now. Wait. I snapped my neck around to see the professor's head sticking out of the black hole. Wait, damn it. Then his shoulders were through. I turned back to Jackson. Blood was pouring out of his eyes. I'm almost through. A second kid started to shake. One more second. I looked to see that the professor was through. He was back in the room. Do it, he shouted. 2 things happened after that at the exact same time. I heard a wet popping sound, and I watched as the wormhole disappeared, as though it was never there, but I had never pulled the lever. I slowly turned to look at Jackson. His head was gone. Judging by the bits of brain and splatters of blood on the bowl thing above his neck, his head had just exploded. The whirring of the machine gradually died down, and then it was silent. The 3 kids who were still alive stopped shaking and closed their eyes. A tragedy, said the professor, pointing at Jackson with the exploded head. But not for nothing. I've been there. I've seen it. Chief, I've seen it. I hunched over and puked. It was weird, but my first thought was, what a mess I'll have to clean up later. I don't know. I guess my mind had sort of shut down and I was going on autopilot. I was the janitor. I cleaned up messes. That was all I knew. Then it hit me, the reality of what had happened. You son of Fabbage, I yelled. You told me those kids would be okay. The professor put this sickening smug grin on his face. He would have been chief had you pulled the lever at the 30-minute mark as instructed. You told me to wait. Did I? Yes, you fucker. I'm calling the police. I had a walkie clip to my belt. It wouldn't get me the police, but it would get campus security. I reached for it and had it in my hand when I heard a groan behind me. I turned to see that it was one of the kids. They were waking up. I went over to unstrap them from the chairs. The first kid's eyes blinked open, and when she saw the professor, she started screaming. It's okay, I said. It's okay. It's all over. She kept screaming. Then the second kid woke up. He looked right at me with wide, terrified eyes. Get us out of here, he shouted. I'm working on it. Kid, I said, fumbling at the straps. They were on tight. The third kid woke up. It's here, she said. It made it through. Everything's okay now, I said. Your friend didn't make it. I'm afraid, but it's over. I'll make sure the professor pays for what he did to you and your friends. The first kid was still screaming at the top of her lungs. Get us out of here, shouted the second kid again. The third kid looked me dead in the eyes and, in a totally calm voice, said, That's not the professor. What? Of course it is, I said. What I saw when I turned to look at the professor will haunt me forever. The professor's mouth was twisting around at odd angles, like something was moving the lower half of his jaw randomly, or like he was trying to get a hair out of his mouth that kept jumping around. The veins on his neck bulged, then sunk back down, then bulged again, so that they were thick as ropes. His wrists were rotating in ways they weren't supposed to rotate, as his arms flailed around wildly. I had the first kid, the screaming one, free. She jumped out of the chair and ran to the door, but her legs were wobbly, and she tripped over herself in the middle of the room. I went to work on the second kid, whipping my head around every second to look at the professor. It looked like there was something crawling around under his skin, something big, "Get us out of here," the second kid shouted yet again. The first kid was still on the ground, screaming. I worked away furiously on the straps. "If you believe in God," said the third kid with an eerie calm, "then pray." I took a glance at the professor, and that's when the first bone burst out of his chest, through his suit. I call it a bone, but it was pure black and dripping with green slime. "As for me," said the third kid, "I do not believe that there is a God. Not after what I have seen." The second kid was free and made a run for it. I scooted over to the third kid, but watched as the professor reached out an arm and grabbed the second kid by the top of his head. The professor gave one quick twist and let go. I heard a terrible snap, and the kid slumped to the ground, dead. 3 more black bones came out of the professor's chest, dripping. He laughed and bent down to the first kid, who was still screaming, as bones began to poke out of his back like a fucking stegosaurus from hell. "What is that thing?" I asked as I fumbled at the straps of the last kid. "It does not belong here," said the kid. "No shit," I said, getting one strap free. "But what is it?" "It comes from a terrible place. A place where there is nothing save pain. Endless pain, incomprehensible to our minds." "Great," I muttered as I noticed with a sinking heart that the screams from the girl behind me had stopped. Then I heard a wet crunch. I couldn't help it. I looked to see the professor tearing into that poor girl's throat with long black fangs, dripping in green slime. I turned back to the kid, almost done with the straps, just a few more seconds. "What's your name, anyway?" "Kid. Claire." "Claire," I said, my mind trying to stay focused. "When I get you out of these straps, I want you to pick up this chair and throw it at that thing." "Okay." "I'll do the same thing." "Okay." "Then we make a run for it. Do you understand? And you do that." "I understand," said Claire. "I do hope it works." I did hope it would work, too. "We have to make it work, Claire," I said, yanking off the last strap. "Come on." We stood up together, and I reached over to pick up a chair. I hurled it at the professor with all of my strength, and it shattered against his bone back. I heard a terrible shriek then, and watched as Claire's chair followed behind. I grabbed Claire's arm with one hand and reached for my pocket knife with the other. The only way out of that room meant passing by the professor. We started running as I pulled the knife out and flicked it up. The professor stood, still shrieking, as the green slime mixed with the red blood from the kid's throat and dripped down his chin. I took a wild stab at the professor's neck and connected. I kept running with Claire, leaving the knife stuck in the professor's neck, and made it to the door. I had my hand around the knob when I felt Claire pulling away from me. I looked back, helpless, as I saw the professor reach long black claws into her gut. I threw the door open and left her there. Good God, I left her there. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. I made it outside the lab building somehow. I don't remember how. My mind just sort of shut down as I ran like hell, I guess. I did have the presence to go around and lock all the doors from the outside. Then I got on the radio to campus security. "You guys need to get the police over to the astrophysics center fucking ASAP. There was a fucking massacre in there." The front door started to rattle, and I heard the god-awful shriek again. "Repeat," said a voice over the walkie. "Look," I said, "call up Lawrence Summers right now." That was the president of Harvard at the time, and I had seen his signature on the papers in that folder with all the consent forms. Tell him that the wormhole experiment has gone way the fuck south. The rattling at the door stopped. I only prayed that that thing didn't figure out it could just break a window and crawl out that way. This is the janitor, right? Said a different voice on the other end of the walkie. Is this a joke, the wormhole experiment? Have you been drinking? Call Lawrence Summers. If you don't, I promise you that you'll never be able to live with yourself. Do it now. There was a horrible pause. I heard the professor trying the side door now, shrieking once again. 10 to 4, asterisk, 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 asterisk. A fleet of black SUVs pulled up 2 minutes later. A team of heavily armed men jumped out and ran past me, breaking the windows and jumping inside. I heard a stream of gunfire and screams, so many screams, and the professor's horrible shrieks. After a while, it was quiet, and a second team of men jumped through the broken windows. I didn't hear any more gunfire. I felt a hand on my shoulder and whipped around. A man was standing there. I don't remember a single thing about what he looked like, but I remember our conversation. Tell me what happened, he said. I told him the full story, the same one that I've told you. We are prepared to give you a lot of money, sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. It means that you can never tell anybody about what happened here tonight. How much? $1 million and a promotion. The man paused. You mean you still want to work? Work here? After tonight, somebody's got to clean up the shit, I said. Fine, of course. And one more thing. And what's that? Asked the man. I want to know that this will never happen again. I want you to blow all of that shit up and burn all the notes. Of course, and I want to watch. Of course, said the man. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. And so I thought it was over. But it's not. Last night I saw the professor again. He looked me right in the eyes, flashed that smug grin, and said, Hey there, Chief. That's when I ran the hell out of there. The police don't believe me. I've sent a dozen emails to Lawrence Summers' assistants. I've called every number that I've found listed for him. I haven't heard anything back. I don't know who else to turn to. I'm afraid the professor is going to open the wormhole again, and I'm afraid this time he might bring his friends back with him. Story 2. Listening, I didn't know my uncle too well, which I guess is why I couldn't shed even a single tear at his funeral. I had only seen him for a few occasions in my life, and most of them was when I was 6. He seemed like a nice guy, but even back then, I could see something different in his eyes. I just didn't know what it was. When I was 15, I could clearly see that loneliness had consumed him, which eventually led him to taking his own life. Alive one day, gone the next. Nothing but a pale face and an empty bottle of pills lying on the floor of his living room was found. My dad says it was because of the divorce, but my mother persisted that it was because neither she nor the rest of my uncle's relatives ever cared to check on him for several years, even on the holidays, almost like he didn't exist. I felt guilty myself, but I knew that there was nothing I could do. Mom cried a lot that day. After the funeral, she would go and visit her brother's grave every chance she got, often bringing flowers and candles to pray for his peaceful passing to whatever was waiting for him. I had to join her after school most of the time. I didn't know if I liked going to the cemetery every day, but I respected my mother for trying to make amends over past mistakes. At least enough to ignore everyone that called me the cemetery girl. After a week or so, however, I did see someone who'd better fit the role of cemetery girl. One sunny afternoon, I spotted someone who was doing something by the gravestones. I didn't know what she was doing at first, but already she was giving me an odd first impression, mostly because of the long stuffed and striped rabbit ears she had on the hood of her jacket. I never did get how fashion worked, but I knew something like that wouldn't slide easily. I didn't pay her much attention until the following week later. She was a lot closer to us now, and I could clearly see what she was doing. Beside the tombstone, she was placing her head down on the ground to one side, as if she was listening for something. She didn't care if the graves had concrete slabs or simply bare dirt. Every time I saw her, she would place her ear on a different grave, and each time a lot closer to my uncle's. I got a better look of her, clearly seeing the rabbit ears were just one part of her surreal wardrobe. Her jacket bore the same pink and white stripes, and I also noticed the oversized green button in between the two ears, looking almost like an eye of a doll or something. I could clearly see a happy smile lining up on her face, like she was enjoying whatever it was she was doing. I tried not to think too much of her, but as time went on and she got closer to us, I couldn't help but notice her presence more and more. One day, I decided to talk to her myself. I constantly switched from looking at my mom and to the strange girl ahead, now only about 6 graves beside us. My mother was still busy with setting up the candles. The lighter she used wasn't cooperating. "Hey, Mom, can I go look around the place for a bit?" I asked, not really sure if I should mention the strange girl or not, even though I knew she had been seeing her as well. She made a weird face, which was understandable. "Okay, just don't do anything stupid. And don't go too far," she told me. I nodded and headed off. When I got up to the weird girl, she still had one ear on the ground. Once she took notice of me, she immediately stood up. "Hi there," she said gleefully, throwing her arm in the air. "Yeah." I reply, giving her a wave with less than half of her enthusiasm. There was a brief moment of silence between us, an uneasy feeling washing over me as the awkwardness settled in. "So what are you doing here, exactly?" I finally managed to ask. "Oh, nothing special, just listening in. It can be pretty boring sometimes, but it's fun when you hear them." I was confused to what she had just said. Hear who? She didn't say anything. She only knelt down on the ground again and motioned for me to do the same. I hesitated, but eventually I did. I felt the wet soil soak through my jeans, making it even more uncomfortable to move. Her ear was pressed against the ground of a Wilbur Whately Sr. tombstone. The look on her face kept changing constantly, changing from bored to looking like she was really close to bursting out laughing, and she eventually did, raising her head in the process. "Ha, ha, ha, sorry, I don't think you'd want to hear this, hee," she vaguely stated. I did not understand her at all, and I was beginning to think that it might have been a bad idea approaching her. She stood up again, dusting off her skirt. "Come on. I know a better place for you to start." I don't know," I said, standing up myself. "I'm not supposed to wander around too much. It ain't that far from here, I can promise you that." "Right about." She spun around, putting her hand above her eyes, almost like a sailor scanning the sea for dry land. there. She pointed to another grave I couldn't quite distinguish. True to her word, it didn't seem too far from us. I didn't think it would land me in trouble, at least. Okay, if you say so. She led the way, passing by 3 different rows of concrete slabs with the names of the deceased etched on the headstones beside them, and moving on to the one at the far left corner of our block. From where we were, I could see my mom, kneeling down and still busy praying. I looked at the tombstone that stood beside me. The name was slowly fading away, Mitchell being the only thing I could clearly make out of it. Mitch here can be a real wallflower, but when he starts talking, you won't believe how cookie his stories can be, she remarked before kneeling down. I did the same right as she bent her head down on the concrete slab. She listened and for about half a minute, before sitting back upright with a giggle. Yup, that's Mitch. All right. Okay. It's a little tricky at first, but it'll be worth it. Trust me, sure. Okay. What should I do exactly? Just get your good ear out and listen. Oh, and just make sure there isn't anything that can, crawl into your ear and stuff. Believe me, you do not want that, hey? This was probably my last chance to get up, make up a lame excuse, and run away, but I still decided to press on, staring down at the concrete. I asked myself a question. A boatload of questions, really. Was I really going to do this? Listen in on someone's grave for some currently unknown reason, with my own curiosity being the only thing that drives me to do so. And then there was that one question. What was I going to hear if I did? I placed my 2 hands on the cold slab and slowly lowered my head, putting my left ear down, hearing the same bubble-like sounds you'd hear when you cover your ears. I stayed like that for a few minutes, hearing nothing out of the ordinary. I can't hear anything, I said, taking my ear off the slab. The girl in front of me looked a little confused. Maybe give it another try, she suggested, tilting her head to one side. I did just that, and still there was nothing. It does sound hollow, though, but I guess it is a grave after all. She didn't look upset, more like she was thinking of something that might help. Arms crossed and her right index finger on the tip of her chin like something a cartoony detective would do. Maybe you're not using your good ear, she suggested, pointing to my right ear. I shrugged. I'll give it a shot, I guess. Pressed down with my right ear this time, I listened in again. I took the time to focus my hearing on that side, blocking out anything the other side picked up. I'm still not hearing anything, I said, my head still on the slab. Sorry. Try giving it a little more time. Maybe that'll help. I followed her request. I wasn't really aiming to find out if there really was anything to hear anymore. It was strange, but I was somewhat enjoying my time with her. She was odd in many different ways, but she was undoubtedly friendly despite my being a complete stranger. Another few minutes passed, and still I heard nothing. I lifted my head up and shook my head. I could see she was back to her thinking stance. She had a puzzled look on her face, a slight hint of disappointment mixed in. A kind of face that I've seen a lot from my mother these days. Hey, what's your name anyway? I asked, snapping her out of the trance she was in. Oh, I never told you. I shook my head again, which in turn made her comically bonk the side of her head. Sorry, hee. Guess I got too caught up in the moment. She stood up on her 2 feet and extended her hand out to me. The name's Amy Doll, she exclaimed. I got up myself and shook her hand with mine. My name's Charlotte, Charlotte Harris. As soon as I said my name, her face lit up with a, "Ooh, you got a pretty name there, Charlotte, hey, thanks." I wasn't used to hearing compliments, at least not anymore. It felt a little embarrassing to hear one out of the blue. Hey, do you want to be friends? I found myself asking out loud. She looked a little confused at first, before a cheerful look returned to her. Aren't we already? I suppose so, I said sheepishly. Then I'm pleased to have met you, Charlotte. She held her hand out towards me again, this time with only her thumb raised in the air. I couldn't help but laugh a little at how silly she was, and yet I did the same thing myself. Nice to meet you too. Well, might have to call it a day. Unfortunately, she suddenly stated, turning around and starting to walk away. I get a little busy at this time of the day. Thanks for talking to me, Charlotte. I really appreciate your company. Be seeing you, W. I said, stopping her in place. HM? What is it? I didn't know why I even thought of it, but I did, and eventually I said maybe I could try listening in again. I pointed my finger down on the grave we were messing with earlier. A large grin spread across her lips. Ha, ha, I knew you'd be up for it. She walked back towards me and knelt beside the tombstone once again. I did the same on the opposite side and positioned myself. I didn't really expect to hear anything that time around either, but nevertheless I still felt a familiar twinge of fear running through my system, leaving me to ask myself again, was I really going to do this? We'll come on and face the music, honey. We'll never know if you hear anything if we don't try, Amy announced. And she was sadly right. My eyes darted back and forth from my new companion to the slab in front of us. I highly doubted that anything different would happen, yet the sense of dread inside me was still there, further expanding as I hesitated. I placed my hands on the concrete again. I took in a deep breath and finally lowered my head down. 5 whole seconds passed. Nothing. 10 more seconds. Nothing. 8 seconds. 5 more seconds. Still no. My eyes opened in astonishment. I heard something. At first, it just sounded like something was moving on the slab above with me. But after letting what I heard sink in, I had a weird feeling that told me it was coming from below me. I heard it again, a sound along the lines of a faint muffled scratch below. How is this even possible? I thought to myself. I was hearing something from below a grave that probably had several layers of concrete or dirt below the slab, and I was hearing something, and it sounded like it was getting faster. I couldn't tell what I was hearing. It sounded like random scratching, but even that I wasn't sure of. It was too far away for me to tell. Beads of sweat went down my forehead and onto the slab. I could feel every single hair on the back of my neck stand on end every time I heard the strange noise that seemed to have come from below me. What was happening? What was I hearing? And how the hell does someone like Amy knew about this? It took me a little while, but soon I realized that this sound was indeed getting closer, getting louder. The scratching, no, it wasn't so much like a scratching noise anymore. Faintly I could make out what sounded like words that formed a sentence I couldn't quite decipher just yet. It was a voice, a very hoarse one that, like someone had been screaming for the past hour or so. Tune SSSST air, Hey was all I could understand at first, but as it got closer, more of the words started to clear up. Tune SSST. RRR, away, don't. RRR, SSST, don't. RRR, SSST, RRR, away, run, away, don't. RRR, SSST, run away. My blood ran cold, hearing the last two words, run away from what? From who? Run away, don't. TRRSSST, ERRR, run away. It was getting closer. Tuned, RRUSSST, run away, run away, run away. It was getting louder, more frantic, more angry. Run away, run away, run away. The voice felt like it was only a few inches below me, as if a man pressed his face against the slab and whispered the words up above, whispering the words into my ears, as I began to understand each word he was telling me. Don't. Trust. Just as I was steeling myself for the worst, the voice abruptly stopped. I couldn't hear anything anymore, not even a hint of the mysterious, scratchy voice that was coming from below me. I listened in for a good long while, but still there was nothing. The voice was gone. Frustration made me sit upright, seeing Amy again after what felt like an hour. I forgot that she was even there, and seeing a girl who apparently knew about what I was hearing, and one who had a huge excited grin on her face, only added to the mix of confusion and anger that was boiling up inside me. Sue, did you hear it? Huh? Did ya? She asked frantically before I could say anything, biting the tip of her thumbnail afterwards. What the hell was that? I asked in a tone that was far more hostile than intended. Rather than being offended, she gasped in astonishment, clapping her hands together in joy. You did. You heard him. That's so awesome. That is so awesome. She suddenly stood up and began trotting around in circles, constantly repeating what she just said a few seconds ago, doing all sorts of wavy dance-like motions with her arms and legs. I couldn't understand it, I commented, still trying to make sense of it all. She stopped midway of her dance, one leg and two arms in the air as if she had been frozen in place. Oh, she said, turning back to me. She then returned to her thinking stance from earlier. Try listening again, she said nonchalantly. I was taken aback at how calm she was. Was this what she was hearing on every grave? I don't know. I hesitated, my anger soon melting back into a state of fear to the unknown. Oh, come on, Charlotte. If you stop now, you're gonna up feeling like you wasted an opportunity of a lifetime, she exclaimed. You're gonna be stuck with this mystery for the entirety of your life, and you'll never be able to go back. She started jumping around again, throwing her arms up in the air. Unless, she stopped, holding up her right index finger up like a man who was striking a bargain with someone. Unless what? I asked, quivering under the weight of the whole scene. Unless you put your ear back down there and listen again, she said ominously, pointing to the grave and then tilting her head to one side, cupping her own ear with her hand. Earlier, I would have laughed at how silly her statements and actions were, but during those moments it felt like she was leading me into doing something that was far more twisted and sinister. Twisted or not, I couldn't say that she was wrong. I stared back at Amy one last time, a look of great anticipation written all over her face, and placed my head back down on the slab. Closing my eyes yet again, I listened in, my entire body shaking from both the ache from straining the neck for so long and the fear that was building up as the silence drove on. I clenched my teeth, biting at nothing as I heard. Nothing, there was nothing, no voices, no sounds, nothing. There was no sound for 2 whole minutes until finally, "Charlotte, what the heck are you doing?" I heard my mother ask from behind me, Mom?" I blurted out, head still down on the slab. I opened my eyes and could faintly see her white pant leg at the edge of my vision. "Get away from that grave. God knows what sort of people stepped on that," she scolded me. But I still couldn't move, a sudden wave of panic and confusion petrifying me on the spot. "Don't worry, Miss, the graves here are 100% clean," I could hear Amy say to her still. "Get your head off of that. It's a little disrespectful to the dead, don't you think?" Even if I wanted to listen in, I knew my mother wasn't going to let me. I wasn't even sure if I really wanted to find out about what the voice was saying. Really, I was glad that she was there to stop me, to drag me back into the normal world. But just as I was about to pull my head off of the concrete surface, I heard it again. This time I heard what he said very clearly. I jumped back, falling down on the grass as I tried to stop a shout of terror from getting out. "Charlotte, what's gotten into you?" my mother exclaimed. I heard it. I practically shouted out of fear. My mother, of course, looked utterly confused. "Heard what?" she asked me, her confused stare slowly turning to a look of concern. It was, I was left speechless. There was no way in hell that she would have believed me if I told her. I was having a hard time believing it myself, giving Amy a hard glare. I expected her to at least help me in the situation, but she only gave me a shrug. My mother helped me in getting back up. "Well, what is it?" I could feel my lips still quivering. I didn't know what to do. It's nothing," I said, defeated and disappointed at how things were turning out. "Okay, well, I just wanted to let you know that we can go home, unless you wanted to do something else with your friend here." No, I found myself shouting out loud. Realizing what I had done, I felt my face heat up with embarrassment. "I mean, we can go. It's okay," I muttered a little too fast. All right. So who's this new friend of yours again?" my mother asked me, obviously eyeing the strange get-up of the girl in front of us. I wanted to say then and there that she was most definitely not someone I would consider as a friend after what she put me through, but I stayed quiet. There was a very unsettling and awkward silence for a while before Amy took the chance to introduce herself. "Amy Dahl, dear Madame, just a humble teen trying along in this journey we call life." She gave her a soldier's salute, though she was using her left hand instead of her right. My mother couldn't help but laugh at her gleeful antics. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Amy." "Likewise, Miss Charlotte's mom," she replied. "It's Charmaine, and I admire your enthusiasm. My mother's eyes soon darted back to me. "Anyways, we should get going. You need a ride, Amy." I was immediately terrified of the thought of her riding along with us, but by some stroke of luck she declined my mother's offer. "Oh, no, I couldn't, and besides, I'm more of a running type of gal, Miss Charmaine. Don't worry about me." "Good to see that you're still fine with the idea of exercising every day, unlike some people My mother shot me a look, clearly implying the statement was meant for me. But I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to get out of there. Still, be careful around these parts. Get home before dark, my mother told her, which prompted Amy to give another wrong-sided salute. Will do, ma'am. It took a while, but we soon said our goodbyes and went our separate ways. Inside the car, my mother kept asking me what I was doing with my new friend before she got there. I tried my best to avoid the question altogether, only telling her a half-baked lie that didn't really make that much sense. One that I can't even remember anymore. That whisper, that one sentence, what that voice told me still kept swimming around in my thoughts, paranoia building up more and more whenever the memory resurfaced. It made me constantly shiver in my seat the whole ride up until we got home. Even on the next day, it still had me jumping at shadows. I tried convincing my mother that I should try to get home by myself. Sometimes it worked. Other times it didn't, forcing me to return to that cemetery with her. Amy was still there, almost like she never leaves. She would wave at me, the stuffed rabbit ears on each side of her head bobbing up and down as she did. I tried to ignore her as best as I could, only to fail whenever my mother would see her and eventually wave back. She never got close to us anymore, though, giving me a good reason to never talk to her again. I didn't know if I should be happy about that, but deep down in my mind I knew I wouldn't be that lucky for too long. Over the next few weeks of my life, I still felt an uneasy feeling of dread building up after each passing day. Everything was normal, and sometimes it felt normal, but my life was never the same again, all because of one moment in my life, one sentence that I could never forget. Mere seconds before I had decided that I'd had enough and stood up, the voice shouted into my ear with utmost clarity, "Don't trust her. Run away, run away." Hearing that below a grave was bad enough, but my own thoughts gave it a much more horrifying image, one that stuck with me up until I started writing this. I never really found out who exactly he was referring to as her in that cemetery. Story 3. The Rift of Reliat. So long as man is protected by madness, he functions and flourishes. Emil M. Choran. Move it now, I shouted as everyone reached the staircase. Their ragged breathing and obvious exhaustion did nothing to stop the water that was flooding the lower levels of the building we had taken shelter in, nor was it going to give any of us the rest our burning legs and thumping hearts ached for. Being the thinnest and possibly the youngest of the group, I charged my way up the stairs first as fast as I could while the others screamed, looking down the hallway as we all ascended the salvation of our watery hell. The walls of the corridor were slapped violently by the water that was surging its way toward us. Stair after stair, the concrete walls were met with the echoes of severe clanging and thumping of exhausted hands meeting metal, and the desperate panting of a small group of people trying to reach homeostasis on higher ground. A few floors higher up, I decided to look down the center of the railing. My eyes glaring wide at what my sight was met with, I turned facing forward and continued the climb with haste. It has to stop soon. It has to stop soon, I repeated over and over again in my most urgent of thoughts. My legs burned and my rib cage ached. My ears throbbed from the screams of terror that seemed to follow us like a creeping stench up the staircase. Suddenly something went wrong, and one of the younger women fell flailing down the staircase right past me. She must have fallen to floors in a square pattern down the steps before she met the dense concrete wall. With a loud thud, I raced back down after her alone, while the others made for the top. Obviously, no one was related to this girl. My very instincts themselves demanded I leave her for dead and worrying about myself. But I couldn't ignore my sympathy for her pain or tears as I pounded down the stairway. I grabbed her hand and yanked her as hard as I could. Hurry up, I yelled impatiently. She looked up at me crying, and it was then obvious she had broken her pelvis and twisted her ankle at an obscene angle. Being your average skinny nerd, I wasn't big or strong enough to carry her, so I tried to drag her by the hand I originally grabbed. She wailed in agony as I tugged her up stair by stair, but after a few minutes it was no use. The water's stalking presence closed in around us. I refused to give up on this girl. I began to hear the splashes of the water around her feet every time I made progress elevating her higher, but it just fueled my adrenaline more. Without warning, the mammoth jaws of a great white burst from the water. Its enormous mouth of red and hollow struck down on her torso with a nightmarish crunch, ravaging her back and forth until leaving only her top remains and a clank to echo through the concrete tower as its giant head banged the staircase upon exit. I screamed with every vocal cord present in my throat as I was splashed with blood and recoiled violently as the shark left her top half to sit lifelessly against the wall with a look of twisted horror on her face. She was still attached to my hand and as a consequence dangled and squirmed around like a rag doll until I finally shook her death grip free. I ran up the staircase as fast as I could. My legs no longer burned as my terror-driven body and mind realized they made the wrong choice going back for the girl. I was struck with the realization I had been left behind. Hey, I called out, terrified, covered in blood and tears as I ascended the staircase faster than I had before. I was met in response by the loud flicking of a metal door opening and was greeted by the reassuring voice of an older man. "We're in here," he yelled. His voice only sounded 2 floors up, so I followed accordingly. Upon entering the room, I was met with the sight of a near-empty office block, water coolers, desk cubicles, and the faces of everyone that had accompanied me up the staircase moments before, including some fresh ones. There were 22 of us now in total. About 15 of us had made our way up the stairs. "Look," a man said, pointing towards the window. Still out of breath from before, I approached it with him, meeting 5 others that were already taking in the sight of shock I was about to witness. As I stood in front of the window, I was greeted by one hellish scene of an apocalypse. The sky was illuminated by a sinister orange, which seemed to set the clouds themselves on fire. The surrounding buildings were set ablaze and in crumbling ruins, as if some asteroid had smashed into the very heart of the city itself. The heavens were full of strange-looking monsters with wings that slithered in the sky like serpents, meeting helicopters in confrontation and coiling around them as if they were prey. Down below, the screams of terrified citizens and hailfire of desperate soldiers and police weapons could be heard ricocheting through the streets that were not yet flooded. Black and dark green crustaceous monsters ran through the streets and over cars like gorillas as men met monster for the first time and battle ensued. The parts of the city that were flooded contained an eerie silence as sharks of every kind dominated the streets they swam in, because it was ever clear that where they were, life was not. A haunting splash, pop, splash could even be heard through the thickness of the glass we looked through, as colossal tentacled limbs from unseen monsters burst from the inside of buildings, exploding the bodies of the victims in their grasp, dropping their limbs into the waters below. And there, in the very middle of Sydney's darling harbor, sat the very source of the invasion. A giant tear in the fabric of reality itself hovered over the Pacific waters, illuminating the matter in and around it in a horrifying bright purple as water, sharks, monsters from the deep, and other strange-looking things spilled out of it. The sound of our city's emergency horn rang through the streets in long, drawn-out whines. All hope was gone. A couple of men and women beside me began to cry. I fell to my knees in shock, leaning my head and hands against the giant window. Why was this happening to us? It was only this morning I woke in my hotel room ready to attend a supernova convention with my best friend. Now he and apparently everyone I know are dead. We all just looked on as the world around us crumbled. The whining of the emergency horn was continuously being carried through the wind and stabbing our stomachs with dread and fear. As I knelt against the window, with tears welling in my eyes, someone behind us began to laugh. My focus shifted to the voice behind me, and suddenly everyone started to scream. I jumped to my feet without a moment's notice at the screeches that rang through my ears. What sounded like paper crunching and tearing. I turned to see what the commotion was. My entire line of sight was met with a third of the group stabbing everyone with knives. The laughter and screaming began to escalate. Some reacted quickly and violently, defending others and themselves from the attackers. It wasn't until a man's throat was slit right in front of me, splashing blood onto my face, that I reacted myself and bolted for the door. I sprinted with urgency towards the door we had entered not moments before and slammed it open for everyone run. The men and women that were still alive exited the room as fast as they could, while some of the bigger men punched their way out of being circled by these freaks and barged me out of the way as they escaped. Everybody split once they were out of the room. Idiots, stay together. I heard another male voice boom behind me. I chose to follow him up the stairs as he made eye contact with me, not needing to explain what was expected of me. As we climbed the staircase once again, we heard the metal door slam open from below as our attackers gave chase for their prey. I'm sure the tough guy I was following felt the nose assault his spine and we both ran even faster. We paced another 5 floors, but hesitated going any higher as we heard the screeching and hissing of evil unknown things that were probably waiting for us at the top. "In here," the tough guy said. He opened the door, going in first. We were once again met by an empty office block with paper and water coolers strewn about the floor. The tough guy flicked off the office light, and we could hear our pursuers' footsteps ascending the staircase swiftly. Suddenly the footfalls slowed down. It became apparent there was only one. They began trotting lazily up the concrete steps, while whistling some random tune. "It's only one, and they know we're here," the tough guy whispered. The footfalls were getting closer and closer. "I'll grab him." "You grab the blade," he again whispered to me. I complied with a nod in response. Closer and closer the steps came. We both stood against the wall, waiting. Closer and closer the pursuers' feet fell, until 2 adjacent shadows greeted the bottom, light shining under the door. The whistling stopped. The door's horizontal handle snapped and clacked as somewhere inside it metal met metal. Creaking open slowly, until the entranceway was illuminated by the long shadow of a man. Our predator stepped inside. The silence was nerve-wracking. My heart thundered in my chest, waiting for the fight to begin. He didn't seem to see us with his peripheral vision, and without any hesitation the tough guy charged at him, knocking our stalker to the floor. They fumbled around in the dark briefly before I flicked the light switch on. The tough guy was immensely stronger and thicker, while our attacker was nothing more than a common office worker. My defender had hold of our assailant's wrist as they struggled and grunted, while I started punching the man in the face as hard as I could. He seemed to be getting weak very quickly from both our efforts against him. As soon as I found the chance, I wrestled the knife from his grasp, stabbing him repeatedly in the chest viciously. It felt strange, like cutting into a watermelon. The skin gave little resistance, yet if I happened to puncture a boned area, it gave the blade a swift little bounce, while with every strike warm blood splashed all three of us as the man screamed out for his life. After no more than a minute or two of struggle, our pursuer lay dead, and the tough guy lay on the floor catching his breath, while I looked down at the blade. It was a dagger of some sort. The hilt was long and covered in leather, while the next section of the weapon had a dirty green and rusted-over crest of some squid-looking thing with tentacles. The blade itself was nightmarishly twisted in a way that made it look like a snake. Whatever this thing was, it was old. I helped my savior to his feet, both of us catching our breath, while he himself inspected the dagger. "You need it more than me. Keep it," he said. Our rest was cut short as we heard others approaching from below. I walked cautiously over to the stairway and peeked at what was below. I gasped in fright as I was met with the staring gaze of at least 10 other people already looking up at me. There was one that stood out. He was wearing a dark purple, almost black robe that had a hood covering his hairline. His face was pale and covered in tiny black veins. He had glowing purple eyes that were just not human. He smiled at me with a filthy grin, and I backed away from the railing. I looked at the tough guy and ran. He followed me with haste. We pelted yet again up the agonizing flight of stairs, while the maniacal laughter of these cultists echoed through what was now concrete dungeon. Every floor we scaled we were able to hear their taunts. Some doors of higher floors were already open as both of us ran past. Some had monsters flying around outside if there was a window. Some had more cultists practicing with candles or sawing the limbs off of cadavers. Others were just a black empty hell that made us run faster. We were accompanied by the screams of victims, laughter of maniacs, and roars of unknown monsters, which caused the lights to flicker above us, while the climb itself carried us higher into our ascent of madness